Now, the only UK judge to publicly say they are transgender is planning to take the government to the European Court of Human Rights. This is over the Supreme Court's groundbreaking ruling on biological sex. Dr. Victoria McCloud, who stepped down last year, said the judgment and the equality watchdog's new guidance violated her human rights. And we can speak to Dr. McCloud now a litigation strategist at W Legal. Hello there, welcome to the programme.
Hi, Chris. Nice to be here.
Well, explain to us, first of all, why you're taking this further and why you don't feel, from what I understand, that you were properly represented in the Supreme Court's decision.
Yes, I mean, I came out more than 20 years ago and I thought I had changed my legal sex under the Gender Recognition Act. And the Supreme Court has said that apparently I didn't. And it said that without hearing any trans people in the courtroom at any stage. And it did so after rejecting my formal application to be heard along with another trans person. And when doing so, it gave no reasons whatsoever. And as far as I'm concerned, that infringes Article 6 of the Convention on Human Rights, which is a basic principle of British law, which is that you hear both sides and you give reasons.
So just on that point, courts have the discretion, as you will know, to consider arguments from outside interveners as they describe it. But judges often reject such interventions, don't they, if they conclude that they're going to hear all the relevant arguments from others. So presumably in this case, the judges felt they had all the information they needed.
Well, I mean, I think the word there is presume. Who knows?
Well, they heard from Amnesty International on one side, didn't they? They felt they obviously had enough.
Yeah. Well, we don't know. They didn't say. They decided it. But what I do know is that they didn't take into account the impact on the trans community or indeed really consider this from a point of view of proportionality, because the impact on when I say trans people, by the way, this case was actually about 8,000 people who had been through the Gender Recognition Act process. But the impact of the judgment is far, far wider than that, and impacts on all women, on lesbians, on disabled people, and so on. So it isn't just about trans people, and it isn't just about the groups that intervene. It's far wider. And when a court exercises a discretion, it is still acting as a court, and it has to weigh into account all the relevant factors in doing so. And that includes whether, in fact, you are acting proportionately in shutting out the only or the main affected group by this.
I suppose supporters of the court's decision would say the judgment reinforces women's legal protections under the European Court of Human Rights, right? And might ask why a trans woman's desire to be validated as female trumps a biological woman's rights to access single-sex spaces, single-sex rape crisis centres, for example.
Well, I mean, the answer in law is that it doesn't. The existing law, even as it stood prior to this decision, was that those were case-by-case matters. So that, for example, if a trans woman, and I'm anatomically female, was raped, I would need a rape crisis centre. If a non-trans woman was raped, it may well be appropriate to exclude a trans woman if the circumstances were justified. The law already allowed that. That's not an issue. Nobody has an absolute right to any space, and that's not really what this is about. But this hasn't improved the rights to safety of women, because now people who are anatomically female are being strip searched by male officers, and any woman who is going to be strip searched will now have to prove her biological sex to enable the police to establish whether she's trans or not.
But I suppose
how's she going to do that?
It's that point of you saying there's 8,000 people and then plenty more as well. But then if we're talking about numbers, the point I was making before is a point that's made by Kate Barker of the campaign group LGB Alliance in response to what you have suggested, saying the needs and wishes of a tiny number of trans women, like Victoria McCloud, cannot supersede the rights of 34 million women in the UK who need and deserve the privacy, dignity and safety of single-sex spaces.
Well, as I said, they don't. The circumstances in the law enable single-sex spaces where appropriate. What has been said, however, by the government is that I must use the gentleman's lavatories. I have female anatomy. That will endanger all women because the reality is that if we turn it on its head, trans men will now in fact, be obliged to use female restrooms, female lavatories. Men, not just trans men, cis men, will now be able to walk in carte blanche and simply say, oh, I'm a trans man. try proving otherwise. This is cover for enhanced violence against women. And the problem we have is that the lesbian community, and here I don't mean the trans lesbian community, I mean the cis lesbian community, the vast bulk of whom don't support this decision, I've spoken to so many of them, already get abuse and are confronted in the ladies' lavatories and accused of being trans. And indeed, I think half the reports of so-called trans people in the loos are actually lesbian people. They're going to get more abuse now, and there's no legal way to prove your biological sex. It's not defined.
What chance of success do you think you have? Because, you know, people with much better legal minds than me say that one of the guiding principles of the Supreme Court decision was to ensure that the Equality Act was compatible with the Human Rights Act. So I suppose, to put it another way, the Supreme Court already considered what you are challenging when they made their decision.
Well, I mean, if you want to cite the part of the judgment where they said that's good. But the reality is they are capable of being wrong, even if they did say that.
OK, thank you. Appreciate your time. Dr. Victoria McCloud,